Good morning, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the workshop, and I'm starting work on a palm frond sculpture. I have a little cold. I apologize for that if my voice sounds funny. But I'm in the middle of the creative process on that, which is always the case with the palm frond category. It's wide open, and I like that creative aspect of it. There are very few rules, so it allows you to use your imagination, and that's what I'm doing right now, is kind of imagining what I'm going to create. So I'm going to flip the camera around and talk a little bit about where I am so far. I've got two small fronds here, and I just got thinking about, could I use both of those in a palm frond sculpture? I really like the length on this one. The stem is really long and narrow, and I don't want to cut all of that off. I'd like to make use of it. And on the flicker that I put together, if you haven't seen that, I did a little video on that palm frond. I started using negative space by cutting out the palm frond, but leaving the shape overall intact. And I think I want to do that on this one as well, and try to create interaction between two birds. It may not work, but I'm going to give it a shot. The thought began to emerge, how about a kestrel, a diving kestrel, and using the long shape to simulate or represent speed in that graceful shape. So I've put a pattern of a life-size kestrel together that would kind of fit on this palm frond. And then reading about kestrels, they eat grasshoppers and things like that, small rodents, but they also go after sparrows, small birds. So I got thinking about, well, maybe I could make a sparrow somehow on this frond, and you can see I've kind of begun to think about how that could work, and then somehow position those so that the kestrel is chasing the sparrow. Don't know what that's going to look like or how I'm going to do that, but that's why I thought I would do a quick video. This is the figure it out as you go project. It may be a total failure, but if it works out, I'll have captured some of this video of the creative process. So I've mapped out the bird on here. You can see I made some modifications from the pattern that I put together once I got it on the frond and started thinking about cutting these areas out. So I spread the wings out a little farther than I had in the pattern to fit the frond. And I've mapped out on the front where the head is going to attach in the proper angles. And then what I'm going to do is hollow this out underneath, so maintain the shape of the top of the frond, do some carving underneath. You can see this frond had some splits in it, so I used some body filler to just go ahead and fill those so I don't have to deal with them while I'm carving. So we'll see where this goes. I wanted the wings out on this bird, and now I've got to think about, what am I going to put trailing this bird so that I can maintain the shape of the frond? And I'm thinking about that negative space again, but maybe doing it in multiple areas on this frond. We'll see how that works. Anyway, just getting started, and I thought it might be interesting to share the creative process, and hopefully what we end up with is a lot more pleasing to the eye than what I've got right now. I'll be back. All right, I used the bandsaw to carefully cut out those wing profiles and trim off a little down below to kind of target this head area. Now I'm going to work on removing this material, and I'll have to drill a hole and then use a saw, a hand saw, to cut those spaces out, trailing the wings. I just drilled a 1/2-inch hole through hole there, and then I'm using a little handheld razor saw just to cut through and remove this material. All right, I've got those rough cut out. I do have a little weak spot here I'm gonna have to pay attention to. I'll have to reinforce that. It's just a flaw in the material there that could lead to a crack, so I'll make sure that we use some epoxy in that area. And it's about this time in the age of the project where you start asking yourself, am I nuts? Doesn't look like much, but again, there's a lot of handwork to get those out of there, and now we can do some sculpting on the lower side of the bird to kind of define where the wings are going to be. They're kind of cupped down, so I want to remove some material down underneath to create the body shape down there. Thin up the tail area, so we'll get that taken care of too. Just laid some 2-part DevCon epoxy in that weak area, and I'll let that soak in and stiffen that area up. I'm a little further along now. I got the body shaped up, undercut the wings, kind of define where the tail goes back, and then I cut some grooves in this long stem section because I want to paint that in a way that indicates motion as this bird is diving on its prey. And then I cut out a head. I looked for a heavier piece of Tupelo just for strength. This little hooked bill is, the hooked bill is going to be a little bit fragile, especially when I carve it down, so I'll probably put some super glue on that to make it strong. And then I put a dowel in here, like a 3/8 dowel, just so I can glue the head on and then do the carving of the head in place. And I'm going to turn the head just a little bit so that as the bird is displayed, we're going to be able to see the back, and from the opposite side, the underside, and kind of in a angled down diving position. We'll keep going. Starting to get a little shape to the head. I'm going to go slowly here. I think I need to narrow up the bill a little bit more, or the beak. But I need to check some reference dimensions on that, also eye width and things like that. But I'm not sure about this sparrow yet. It gets a little clunky with both of these, but I'm going to work on it a little bit, ponder that, sleep on it, and pick it up again tomorrow. All right, I've done a little more work, and instead of making feet and hanging them, I wanted to tuck them back like in full speed position. So I just ground into the palm frond in that area, and then covered that area with 5-minute epoxy just to seal everything up and put a hard surface on it. I did carve in the eyes and starting to get some character to the face. I've got a little more detail work to do on that, but as I was looking at this sparrow, I am going to go ahead and carve the sparrow, and I think I can find a way to stack these on a central stand and bank that sparrow like he or she is trying to get away, and maybe slip this over the central stand and then have this come down on top of it with a little bit of distance between the two of them. I'll figure out how to get that done, but kind of display a full chase in progress. So I know I've gone back and forth on this. I think I'll get it carved and see what I think about it after that, but I like the thought of stacking these and going full-on chase. We'll see. Just a quick update on the sparrow palm frond. I've made the rough cuts in this negative space, and I've got the wings out and kind of forward in a down flapping position, so I'm gonna shape that from the front. I've got the head or neck diameter there, kind of the depth of the body to keep that in mind. I've removed the bottom shell of the palm frond so that I can carve this material similar to what I did here and shape the body of the bird. And then my thought is to leave this part of the stem thick and strong, and that'll become the location of the post off of the base, and this will be cantilevered out in midair, which I'm hoping will give the impression of the bird flying. That's the hope anyway. And then this would come in on top of it like we talked about. So just a quick update. I'm gonna cut the head out, get that mounted, rough mounted, and then start shaping the underside here next. All right, using my top and side pattern, I cut out a little piece of tupelo for the head, and I've driven a nail into the end here to give it an additional anchor point, and then I'm going to epoxy the head on. Pardon me for the bad videography. And I'm going to tilt that about like that so that he's kind of banking, trying to get away from the pursuer. So I'm going to epoxy that on, and then I can do some carving on the head. I've got the head rough shaped on the sparrow, and then used a little body filler to blend that in. And I'm going to pause there while this is setting up and go check my reference on bill or the beak. I've never carved a sparrow before, so I want to make sure these shapes are correct. And I'll go search for some reference pictures on that before I do the carving. All right, I've got both birds sealed up, and I just started to work on the composition. The thought I had was, this is nice and heavy and strong, and it would be great to cantilever the bird out so that he's out in midair, and this negative space around the bird can give it a feeling of airiness. And then on this side, I want to position the falcon coming down, pursuing the sparrow. So I'm going to play around with that, and it would be cantilevered out on this side. So I may have to change angles and play around with this until it's a pleasing composition and tells the story of a pursuit. I'm trying a few different angles, positions, elevations. I like this view. Can't have too many iterations on positioning because I want to keep the drill through hole nice and tight. I'll keep playing with this, but it's starting to look like a composition. I made another little adjustment in the angle. Since this is such a long shape, I want it to tie in somewhat with the path of this leading bird so that they're pleasing together. So I shallowed up the angle of attack a little bit on the falcon. So I'll keep playing with that, but I just thought I would give you a couple of shots of the process as it develops. Because this is the composition of these two pieces and how they're arranged will be a big part in how successful they are in telling the story. Another update, I shortened the stream on the back of the tail here. I hated to do that, but it looks more in balance without that much hanging out this side of the composition. So I like that better. It still displays the shape of the frond, but I think that tail streamer was just a little distracting to me, being that long. All right, I've got that composition about the way I think it should look. And now the next critical step is to call it a day and give it a rest. Come back tomorrow, see if I still like it. That initial impression is really important, and I might spot something. Since I've been working on this all day, sometimes you just kind of get invested in what you've done. It's good to walk away and get a different perspective and a fresh start. So I'll do that tomorrow. All right, back in the workshop, and my immediate impression is a good one. I like the composition. So I think I'm going to hold the positions where they are there. Now I want to work on the base. I've got a nice piece of walnut that's good and heavy and broad, and I think I'm going to make an oval shape for that base. I want some width because of this, you know, it's kind of a wide composition. So I want the base to kind of fade in the background, but also complement the carvings. Okay, I've got a hole drilled in the middle of the base, and now I want to take a look at elevation and look at some different heights to the composition. I definitely want it to be up for obvious reasons. They're flying and chasing, but I don't want it to be too tall where it looks awkward. So I just drilled a hole in my bench top there so that I can adjust up and down and take a look at where I want to set the elevation. It's kind of interesting the way the elevation makes a difference. I've put it in a position that I think is too low because the leading bird starts to crowd the table and loses a little bit of that airiness feeling. I had it too high, and then there's too much focus on the supporting rod and stand, so somewhere in the middle. I just thought I'd share that process with you because it's, for me, part of the fascination of good composition is where is that sweet spot that complements the carving, doesn't take away from the composition. All right, I've got the height established. Now I'll just cut the rod to length, and I'll go ahead and cut out the base and get that finished. I wanted to be able to disassemble this for shipping, and in order to be able to put it back together in the proper orientation, I just drilled a hole in the 1/4 inch rod here and put a nail through there to give me a positive location, and then I'll drill or carve a little slot in the palm frond material there so that that can slide in and maintain registration, because this will have a tendency to pivot around this post if I don't have something to lock it in place like that. Just carved a little slot there, and this then can key into that and lock it in place. All right, to locate the top bird, I'm using this sleeve that I drilled out hardwood dowel. I put a nail in there so it protrudes a little bit into the, you can see it there, like a key. And then I slotted the shaft up here. I couldn't do this same approach up here because I need to slide this bird over this area. So I needed this approach on the top bird, and that'll give me registration so that both birds are lined up when they're assembled. All right, I've got the plug installed, and now I'm just lining up the birds so that that plug cures in the proper orientation. It looks pretty good. I've got all the components put together, and I just sealed everything with Deft semi-gloss. I'll let that dry, and then it'll be time to paint. All right, I've got the pieces primed, and I've got them so that they fit. So this bird goes on first, goes down, locks into the key down below. And then this bird has to line up with the slot. There we go. So quick update on the palm frond. I've got the House Sparrow painted, and it's not finished, but with some touch up it will be. I need to put gloss in the eyes, seal everything up, and now I'll start working on the falcon. So another quick update, I've got the Kestrel painted, and I just have to work on the vapor trail behind the Kestrel to finish him up. But he's looking pretty good. And I like the way the two work together. This is the area that I need to finish up right here. All right, I just finished up the latest palm frond sculpture. Let's give you a quick view of that. I like the way it turned out. I think, you know, the composition looks nice. It flows. It conveys speed, which is what I was trying to do. Let me grab the other side. Show you what that looks like. Here's just a quick head-on view, which I think looks nice as well. And now the ceremonial tossing of the palette, which I'm just showing this just to see the variety of colors in this grouping of birds. Time to get rid of that and move on to the next project. All right, everybody, that's a wrap on the creation of the Kestrel and Sparrow palm frond carving. And this video is more about the creative process than it was about how to make this particular carving. But I think creativity, composition is really important in decoy carving and wildfowl sculpture. So hopefully by showing some of my own processes and figuring things out as you go, it's fun. As you saw in the video, sometimes you're not sure it's going in a good direction, but when it's all said and done, I'm very happy with the way it turned out. I'm glad I stuck with the two birds when I kind of hit that wall, and I was afraid that maybe I should just go with the Kestrel at that point. That would have been a shame, because I think the finished product here tells us more of a story with the two birds chasing rather than one bird on its own. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. Good carving to you. This is Tom Christie signing out. See you next time.